Hello guys, today I'll tell you the basic of Codeigniter, the basic flow and some basic examples of Codeigniter. So for this you have to download Codeigniter from the official website, and here is that file. Just unzip that file and here is the Codeigniter source code. Codeigniter basically works on MVC model, that is model, view and controller, and you can see it here in the application folder. There are three folders: the models, views and controllers. Models basically interact with the database to fetch and store the data in the database. Then they transfer the data to the controllers. Finally, controllers manipulate them according to what view wants, and then they transfer the manipulated data to the views. And then views are basically used to display the data to the users. So these things are being divided in three basic hierarchies. The first one is model, then we have controllers, then we have views. Controllers act as an interface between models and views. So let's create an example in Codeigniter. I'll prefer you to install NetBeans, which is an editor of PHP. Create a new project in NetBeans. Create a new PHP application. Let's name it as Codeigniter tutorial. And here is our project. You can see the index.php in the source files. We'll delete this index.php as Codeigniter also provides us the index.php file. Okay, now copy paste all the source code of Codeigniter in your project. Here you can see Codeigniter also provides the user guide. By reading this user guide, you can learn each and every part of the Codeigniter very easily. Let us copy all these folders and files in our project. And that's all. Now you can start running your Codeigniter. Go to your browser, just type localhost. Just make sure whether your server is working or not. I have installed the XAMPP server, as you can see. Now just change the XAMPP name with the name of your project. And here it is, Codeigniter file, the first file. Now how it is loaded? For that we'll go back to the source code. The first file which is accessed is index.php. This makes your browser to get routed to the roots folder. You can see the roots folder, roots file to be more precise, and application config. As you can see, application, we have a subdirectory config, and in this subdirectory we have the file roots.php. Let's see. Here is the root. The default controller for the website is welcome. That is, for each and every URL that is not mentioned in the root, the folder will be redirected to the welcome controller. You can see this controller over here. Here is your welcome controller. So let us create our own controller. For that purpose, we'll have to root it first. Suppose I want, as soon as one writes Sudev, it's rooted to C_main. And if someone writes or passes some argument after it, you can mention any argument passed after Sudev, and we'll route it again to the main controller along with the argument. As you can see, we are saying that any URL mentioned after Sudev will be as it is passed to the C_main controller. So let us create a C_main controller. There are some standards of Codeigniter. Whenever you create a controller, all words should be composed of small letters. When you create a class in it, the name of the class should be same as the name of the file, but the first letter should be capital. The second rule, the second standard for Codeigniter is that each controller should extend the inbuilt class of Codeigniter, that is CI_controller. Let us create a index function in it, which is called by default. And let's echo something. Let's see if it works or not. We mentioned the basic file for it is index.php. Then we'll have to mention the name of the controller, that is Sudev. Then we'll mention if we want to call any basic function. Suppose we want to call index, and that's all. Hey, here I am. Finally, the controller has been executed. But as I mentioned, index is the default function which is not required to be called explicitly. So if we remove index over here, it will run the same way as it is being run right now. This was the part of controller. Now we'll create a view as well, which will be loaded by the controller. So let's create a view. Go to the views folder, create new PHP file. Suppose I create a s underscore for v underscore main. I usually prefer a standard. All the controllers I started with a letter C, and all the views I started with the letter V. Let's write something here. Now we'll have to call this view and the index function like this. This refers to the present object of C underscore main class. You can call its inherited function from C underscore controller, that is load. Then call view function, and in it I'll pass the name of my view, that is v underscore main. So now this is the current object. Load is a variable of ci underscore controller, and view is the function of ci underscore controller, the inherited function, and we have passed v underscore main in it. So let's see if it runs or not. And yes. Now what happened is, firstly the index.php of Codeigniter has been called, which has routed it to the roots file. The root file told that the URL which has been called is for C underscore main controller. As soon as the C underscore main controller has been initialized, we called the index function of that controller, which in further loaded the view that was v underscore main, and finally v underscore main HTML has been loaded in your browser. So that's cool. We have done the basic with the controller, with the views. But what about models? For models, we'll have to first configure our database, and then we'll use the models. For this, we'll have to create a new database, and we'll have to provide its credentials and the config subdirectory, the database file, and here you can mention the credentials, the host name, username, password, database, and all other necessary credentials. In the next session of Codeigniter tutorial, I'll tell you how to use the new database and how to fetch and retrieve the data from the database using models.